Girl, okay, so a while ago, someone asked me for my feelings on a Davy Wavy video entitled, I think, Gay Men React to Racist Grinder Profiles. And girl, okay, I made a video about this about 5 years ago, and I think I was in high school still. I was finishing up high school. It's entitled Racism in the Gay Community. I've since took that video down because I'm about to read myself in this video. But in short, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care about what white men list as their preferences and their profile. It doesn't affect my self worth. It doesn't affect my, um, I don't know, like how desired I feel by the community at large. Because, well, okay. So let me preface this video by saying, like, obviously, girl, I live in Tokyo. And so I acknowledge the fact that if I leave these apps and I leave these networks, I could go out and have a perfectly vibrant queer life and it would be fine here in the city. And people out in like the countryside and people in isolated locations, people in places where homosexuality is criminalized, like they obviously don't have that luxury. Um, but I haven't lived in Tokyo, you know, all my life, and I'm not going to be here forever. So I get it. Like, I understand the importance of some of these things, and I understand how being isolated can kind of compound the effect of um, not being desired by a certain population. But, bitch, we are going to have to get over our colonial thirst. You're going to have to get over your white thirst. I didn't really have an acknowledged white thirst or colonial thirst in high school, but I definitely think a lot of my um, opinions about things were kind of informed by white white perspectives, and my feelings were very much tied to the white establishment's feelings on things and what white people wanted and how white people constructed queer identities, right? And so, bitch, we need to break away from that shit, and we need to stop getting together as a community, specifically gay men, gay fucking men, um, getting together saying, hey, let's talk about racism in the gay community, or let's talk about racism in the LGBT community, which is worse when people do the next thing, which is just talk about white men saying, oh, I don't want to fuck Asian people, or oh, I don't want to date a black man. Or there's like a polarizing thing where it's like either people just talk about outright disgust and then they talk about hyper fetishization. And I've done this before myself. Um, and so I want to clock myself in some of my past videos, obviously, because I'm growing. I'm not a perfect person. But that's like, that's such a small issue if we really look at how racism is affecting our communities. If we look at how it's already hard to get a job if you're perceived as queer, if you're perceived as trans, and how racism is just a multiplier effect and it works against you. The fact that you're a person of color, especially if you're black, bitch, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the fact that, and it's always a talking point with a lot of people in social justice circles. Everyone just kind of offhandedly mentions the fact that a lot of trans women of color are forced into sex work and have to sponsor their lives by selling their bodies, and many times when they don't want to. Um, that is an incredibly huge issue. That is so prevalent. You could find that in any city in America, and there's that. But I feel like a lot of even just like gay and lesbian people and queer people don't even acknowledge the fact that there are even like cis people of color who are also on the streets selling their bodies, who are also sex workers, and the racial hierarchy even within that, how white people are more often connected to populations of wealth. So even if someone does have to sell their body regardless of race, well, specifically with race, a white person would be more likely to be successful with an escort service, would be more likely to be successful going and being a socialite, going to parties, being flown places, getting a lot of money, traveling around with businessmen, with uh, people who have money, right? um, versus people of color who are more likely to be roaming the streets. I don't want to be too blunt, but I'm just gonna be we're gonna be real here. Like people who are gonna be roaming the streets, people who are forced to charge really low prices for selling their bodies, people who are more likely to be dead in a motel room, dead in an alleyway, dead in a dumpster, and have local law enforcement not really kind of acknowledge like what's going on. The media might use the wrong name because their family disowned them and they like bitch like, this is all stuff compounded by racism that's affecting our communities. I'm trying so hard not to stutter. I get really stuttery when I'm like feeling it, right? But so there's that. There's the fact that like just the transfer of wealth to help out other members of our communities is so fucked up. Like there's that saying where if you're a white gay youth and you get a cold, like Ellen will just throw your ass $8 million. Bitch maybe might give you 40 acres and a mule. But if you're a struggling trans like person of color, if you're a struggling gay black man, if you're a struggling indigenous lesbian woman, like bitch, good luck getting on TV. Like it's just not. And of course there's tokens, obviously. um I think the most recent one is that girl who was like really passionate about nursing, who was very vocal on the I Am Kate series, and as a result of that, her cause gained traction, and she got on Ellen, and she got stuff done, right? But there's just like, well, one, we can't rely on Ellen, and two, I mean, there's just the greater phenomenon of like going on YouTube and watching coming out videos and seeing maybe a kid whose parents kicked them out and they're a white kid, or he's a white boy, a white gay boy, and just the white gay establishment comes to his rescue and they get a shit ton of money, and that's totally fine, and I don't want to knock that. I don't. Like, I want that to be very clear. I don't want to knock that, and I think that's good. But there's so many videos of like the same thing happening to someone maybe who looks more like me, or someone who's darker than me, or someone who is more like visibly queer than I am, or someone who is perceived as trans. Bitch, that video will have 12 views. One of those views will be Cat Black, because you know that bitch searches fucking YouTube for Cat. I'm not going to read you. The other view will be me, and then the rest of them will be like a couple of my friends, because like the support isn't there, right? Our projects aren't really supported as much when it comes to film and media, and it's just like can we? I'm just done talking about whether or not Trent, whether or not Caden, like is attracted to me as a black man. Like I'm kind of beyond that point, and I want to recognize, I guess, my privileges. Obviously, before I mentioned like my location being in Tokyo is kind of very fun place to be queer, but um, even on the topic of people being anti-black, I am very often, I wouldn't say very often so much as of late, but historically, numerous times people have told me that I was their exception with regard to their attraction to black people. And it's clear that this is because bitch, I have light skin, bitch, I have a degree, bitch, I have a job. Like, there's like race and class and skin color, like all just kind of, it's a clusterfuck. Um, so I just want to be like really upfront about how I experience these issues, because I don't want to sound patronizing, but there's just like, girl, I don't want to edit this video, but okay, I have to like get my thoughts together. So let me take a drink. I hope you hydrate yourself as well. Hold on. Okay. Girl, there's the fact that like HIV disproportionately affects our communities. There's the fact that homelessness disproportionately affects our communities. Um, there's the fact that like I don't know, like the fact that black people specifically, but of course people of color in general compared to white people, their very existence in public space is criminalized, and so they're more likely to be incarcerated, and that leads to so many people of color who are queer and trans in the prison system definitely not getting the services they need, many people not getting hormones that they need, many people not having access to proper medical care. A lot of people are in like protective custody, which might sound safe, but really, bitch, they leave you in a box by yourself, and that is far from safe with regard to your mental health. And so many of these people like need our help, and by our help, I mean other queer people of color, other. I was gonna say like other trans people of color, but I'm not in a position to tell that community what to do, girl. But they need our help. And I'm going to put links to like various organizations in my description box because there's like letter writing services for people who are in the prison system. You can send them money, you can just send them friendship if you want. There's different organizations that focus on queer people of color around the US. I'll put down there. I've had experiences with only two. One of them being the Jasmine House in Jacksonville, Florida, and another one being Spark Reproductive Justice Now um, in Atlanta. And they put on the Ignite conference that I went to a few years ago. That was like one of the best weekends of my life. But um, I'm just like, I'm just tired. I'm just so tired of like the only talk of racism, specifically amongst gay men, groups of gay men, being fucking grinder profiles and jacked profiles and okay cupid. Like, yes, it's a problem. Yes, it's annoying. Yes, it's compounded if you're in an isolated area. But there are like literally people dying. Like there's literally people that are being crushed by the system. There's people dying in prison cells alone, killing themselves, being killed, and the investigation's not being done. There's people dying in the streets because they have to put themselves in dangerous situations. There's people there's people dying, and like and the discourse is just so commonly like, what do white people like, how do white people frame their attractions, like these white people aren't attracted to me, like that makes me feel this way. Yes, that might make you feel that way until you like decolonize your mind and until you reach a space where your self-worth isn't reliant on that. But like, ugh, I don't know, and I'm kind of urging this. I'm urging this like this shift in the discourse, and I'm urging people to get involved with organizations that serve our population specifically. I'm urging people to start organizations that serve our population specifically. I'm urging people just to do shit, like even if you don't donate money. Some people might be, girl, okay, so I saw a Tumblr post going around just earlier this week. Literally, it was a text post. It was a queer person of color saying like, yo, if anyone is in the Detroit area and they're queer or trans and they're homeless or they're about to be homeless, here's my contact info, reach out to me. And like, I'm pretty sure that bitch just had a couch to spare. And like, obviously not everyone's in a position to do that, but if you are, like, think about it. Like that is kinship. Like that is a service to our community. That is, I don't know, that is like, I almost said nation building, but that's dramatic. But that's like community building. Um, and I think that's just so important. And God, like all I'm thinking of right now is the fact, is like the possibility, I guess, that white people are about to leave us. They've already sort of left us in terms of ideology and the debates around the issues. And by that I mean like white gays specifically and white lesbians specifically and like everyone else who's a part of the LGBTQIAP spectrum. Girl, they're about to leave us, at least in the US, because obviously, like, marriage laws were. Um, what am I trying to say, girl? Marriage equality has been reached, right? And so, like, one of the final hurdles is just like a universal kind of federal or like national level anti discrimination policy on the basis of sexual orientation. And after that, like, I guarantee you, white people are just like checked out. Like, they're good, they are totally fine. I feel like there's already proof of this. Um, I mean, if we think about historical precedents, okay, well, let me share an anecdote. And I think I don't want to drag the wrong school. It was either in Fort Myers or it was in Tampa, Florida, that I was at the Florida Collegiate Pride Conference with a bunch of other activists and um, and like queer student leaders, right? And the keynote speaker was this like older white gay man who was like the head of some institution or some foundation or some bullshit. If I could remember his name, I absolutely would because I would drag him through the mud in public and I want everyone to do it. But I can't remember his name right now. Um, but he just like in his keynote address, he basically said like trans people are being really divisive and they are holding us back. And I think this was regard to anti-discrimination policies. And he was just saying that if we cut like gender identity from anti-discrimination bills that we're trying to pass, they would pass quicker and then we'll go back and get you. Like, this wasn't like a Tumblr argument because of course people kind of talk about this sort of rhetoric on Tumblr all the time, but like this is like a maybe a professor. This is a guy who's the head of organizations. This was someone who was paid money to like deliver a keynote address to queer and trans people, young people. And like he sort of just highlighted the mentality of the white gay establishment, especially of a generation or two before me. Obviously, bitch, people did not even wait till the end of his speech. He was like shouted down. People read him to filth. It was great. It was a wonderful time. But I don't know. So if you just look at like maybe like the women's suffrage movement in the US, for example, where there were a lot of white women who kind of, you know, wanted to be politically involved as anyone should be. And there are also a lot of women of color, and specifically a lot of black women who are like, "Hey, us too! Like, include us in this." And it's not just the fact that women can't vote; it's the fact that there are laws against, or laws and hurdles against black people voting. Um, so we need to like include those as well with regard to voter equality, right? And this debate happening for a number of years, and white feminists, of course, being like, wait, like, that's too much for society right now. If we just kind of pass this aspect of the legislation first, then like that will resolve itself. We'll help that out. We'll come back and like, you know, fix that problem as well. And women get the right to vote in like 1928, and black people still motherfucking suffered, and they suffered for like almost 40 years. Like, I think voter discrimination laws were kind of overturned what in like 1965 with regard to like the random literacy tests and like the very specific targeted poll testing done at black people to keep them from voting. Like, almost 40 years. Like, almost 40 years. That's a long ass time. Maybe if you look at like the history of the world, obviously that's not a long time, but bitch, I'm just letting you right now. I'm letting you know right now that white gays are about to leave us. Our concerns regarding like housing and healthcare, the prison system, criminalization, sex work, all of that shit, like all of that's going to be left in the dust, and it might take quite a while, unless we're mobilized, unless we're organized, and unless we're fighting really, really, really hard. Um, Even more recently, girl. Okay, I'm almost done with this video. This has been a 20-minute long video. Um, the Advocate magazine, they have a Facebook presence, and I have mixed feelings about the Advocate because some of their publications are shit, and then some of it's like, oh, this is a good read, right? But I've noticed that in 2015, their Facebook profile had actually been posting some like borderline radical shit, like stuff regarding wealth redistribution, stuff regarding like critical race theory, more radical kind of feminist ideas were posted. These are like articles and like think pieces posted by like the mainstream gay magazine, right? And like stuff regarding Black Lives Mattering, like bitch, some intern was like going ham, like some intern had a Tumblr and was like, "Girl, I'm gonna plug these ideas in here," and I was really pleased to see a lot of these things. But of course, I made the mistake of checking the comments, and if you just like read the comments, of course, like stuff regarding race, I kind of paid close attention to because um, racial politics in the U.S. Uh, it's something that concerns me a lot, and it's something that I'm like kind of scared about dealing with when I return to the U.S. But if you read the comments aloud of like these white gay men on the Advocate magazine's news posts, it would sound like a Trump rally. Like all I can say is like it would sound like the most conservative, backwards, ugly shit in the world. And there's either the people who are like hyper conservative and like as I said just sound like motherfucking Trump supporters, or there's the people who are like liberal as hell and somehow think that like representation clears like it makes everything like better, I guess. That representation is like a primary concern of marginalized people, and that like because there's some trans people in some TV programs and because there's some black protagonists that somehow it's a good like in some way it's a good time to be trans and in some way it's a good time to be black, when the reality of the situation is it is not a good time to be either of those things. Both of those things are criminalized. You can be killed in the street for being trans. You can be killed in the street for being black, and people can get away with it. And um, I don't know, like seeing that many people kind of react to these ideas in this way, like that many white gay people specifically, kind of pushes me in the direction of wanting to just turn my gaze to turn my gaze like my gaze to um, issues specifically affecting queer people of color, and for me to turn my attention to organizing these people and organizing my people and sharing ideas with my people and learning from my people and like I don't know, making things better for us because no one else is looking out for us. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. No one else is looking out for us. And so you can be concerned all you want about Trevor saying that he doesn't like black men or he only likes white and Hispanic men. Yeah, that's annoying. Go ahead and be concerned about it. But there are people dying. And I think we should talk about that a little bit more when we bring up racism affecting the LGBTQ community.